Hello, everyone. I'm Corey P. This Rach, this Razzo. We
What's
got
up?
Britt from the block, and this
Woo.
is Breaking Bread. How everybody doing?
Great.
Y'all good?
Yeah.
Y'all ready to break some bread?
Let's do it.
All right, so man,
What we talking about?
November the 3rd is general elections.
Oh,
Right.
we're voting for president. What else?
President, U.S. Senate. You know, we also have Congress positions available. I mean, it's a lot of positions, you know, depending on where you at locally. But we got some things, man, that we'll be voting that's going to be changing a lot of stuff, man. So,
What else? What's important other than the president? See, I'm missing out on all this. I didn't even know.
Yeah, so we got the U.S. Senate. You know, depending on where you at again. So we're in the state of Alabama, right? So we got the president, then we got the U.S. Senate. That's Doug Jones versus Tommy. Yeah. So we got that we're voting on that, and that's important. All right. So that's major. And then depending on where you live in your county or city, you have other people. So we got somebody running for Congress, and so we also got some other different attorneys, Mobile County positions open as well. So we got some things going on. Like, I mean, what y'all think about voting? Like, you think voting is important?
It is, but it's so intense. It's so much. Like,
it
there's
feels
no
like,
excuse to vote, but it's like now being an adult, like I gotta.
It feels like a real grown-up thing to do.
Yeah,
it does. And I think that like in school we're taught about voting and, you know, people vote and why we vote and what we vote for, but they don't really stress the importance of it. And I think we might have had like a mock election in like 5th grade, but after that they're just like, yeah, just do it. You just have to, because once you're able to vote, you're already out of school. So I guess they don't take on that responsibility.
You made when I think about it, I don't remember in high school them actually doing anything. I do remember in 5th grade, like elementary school, but any y'all like high school, did they talk to you all about voting and the important? And the crazy thing, most seniors are 18 years old.
Right.
So they can vote.
Yeah.
Like, why haven't our leaders push that, y'all think?
They tell you to vote. Now, I remember they used to be out there and they're making sure that you register stuff, but they didn't actually talk about voting, like you saying, the Senate, the important things in our community. Like, I still don't know about
and how to get resources about, you know, figuring out who you want to vote for, because at that point, I think like that's the point in your life where you're making decisions for yourself as an adult, apart from whatever you grew up with, whether it's grandparents, parents, you know, influencers of that sort. So that's an important time for you to really understand what your thoughts are, what you believe, what's important to you. I mean, it's huge. I think it needs to be stressed more than it actually is.
So was it at a certain point in your life then that you realized that you wanted to see change? When I say that, like you walked outside and you just look at your community like, man, I want this to get better. Or you go into your school, you're like, man, I wish this was better. What part of your life you start recognizing that?
It probably wasn't until like I got to college that I really understood what I wanted to see. But then again, I had a totally different view of my community than a lot of other people did. Just being real.
Yeah.
I am a straight white Christian woman. So things for me look totally different than they look for a lot of other people. Just being real, a lot of things favored me that didn't favor other people. So it wasn't until I got into relationship and friendships with other people that looked totally different from me that I realized that things need to change.
And that's a great perspective right there. Like, depending on what area you grew up in could change your perspective of how important, or like if you really need to see change. Because if things are looking great, and I'm not saying it was in your area, but if things are looking great, depending on where you at, you really don't focus on it, right?
Right.
Like, what about you, Razzo?
I think maybe when I started driving, but like 21, 22, because the roads like Creighton and Thomasville area are raggedy, and I just would hear my mama and daddy to be like, you know, that's the city and all that kind of stuff. I ain't really know, but then when I started driving, I was like, okay, this don't make no sense. That this road always getting paid, but Bay Shore still looks dusty. Like, I'm just like, so I was like, okay, yeah, we need to vote.
Yeah. What about you, Britt? Did it ever come?
I mean, we being real. is coming,
Yeah.
but it's not. I mean, I'm just being honest. It's
Yeah.
probably some may view this as a very ignorant response, but I mean, I never really cared. I never really thought my vote mattered.
Yeah.
So
Well, yeah, I used to think
mean,
that.
why? It's like Ross said, it's a lot. It's a lot to look into.
Yeah.
And you know, I don't know. I guess I always felt like whatever the government wants to happen is going to happen.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So why am I even wasting my time? But I will say this, as I'm surrounded by people like yourself, and as I'm getting older, I'm still voting. I'm just at the point where I'm like, all right, CP, who should I vote for?
Yeah.
But I'm still voting. But
Yeah.
it hasn't always been this way. It's been very slow and steady. You know,
Yeah.
I shouldn't say it's slow and steady, but it's been a slow process.
Yeah.
I was like that until we voted for Obama. That was my first time voting.
Okay.
He won, and then I was in college, and so to see like all these people come together, and we like, yes, we can. I was just like, I voted for him, and that made me feel important. But then all this other stuff, I'd be like, I think that
so
it don't
that
matter.
was something that made you say, okay, I want to go out and vote because this is the first opportunity that we had. You know, well, it's not the first time an African American ran for president, but the first time a person at this level had that nomination from a major party.
Right.
You know, and so that created that excitement. And so I guess the past question, what I was thinking about, is it anything in you? It was never something that, like, I guess for me, growing up, I remember the moment. I grew up in I was at my grandmother's house, and we called the police. Somebody was out there shooting. I'm talking about, I could look out my window and they having a shootout, right?
Oh.
And my grandmother called the police, and they never showed up.
Oh, wow.
And I remember being a kid, I'm like, this is crazy. Like the police. But then later on in life, I realized that area, it was a dangerous area. I didn't even think it was dangerous because that's where I grew up at.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it didn't seem dangerous to me. That was my environment. But a lot of times police didn't want to go in that area, right? Because they was afraid of it. So they let them chill out. Then they come at the end. And so at that moment, I realized, man, I want change. I want my community to. So I started running for office like in elementary school. Like I was a part of the Student Government Association.
Oh, yeah.
And it was something that I experienced that created that, like, okay, I want to make a difference.
Right.
And I think sometimes people they don't say, okay, well, they don't see that change in the community has to do with voting, or change in the community has to do with having the right leadership in place.
Mm.
And so
Yeah.
for you looked at it in that perspective that, okay, man, this opportunity to you said, yes, we can. Yes, we can. Like, okay, change is going to come because I believe in this leader. So I guess for you, you know, I'm asking you all, what traits do you look at when you vote for somebody? Like, what important things that you feel like a leader should have?
I think it's important to, before we get into that,
Okay.
it's important to know what you want before you go into it so that you're not persuaded. So like before you look for the leaders, you know the answer to the question that you just asked.
Yeah.
Because it's really easy to get, whenever you're looking online and stuff like that, get swayed one way or the other because of the way they word things. So I'm glad you asked that question, because that's what I feel like that's a good starting point of what do you want outside of politics in a leader. Know what you already want, because when you go on their websites and stuff, it sounds great, but you need to know how they're, you know, what they think and how it lines up with what you want.
Yeah.
I just want them to care, make it at least seem like Obama made me feel like he cared. I feel like if I saw him, he would have bought me lunch or something. I don't know. Some of these leaders or these people talking about, you could just see that they either were talking about money or rich people or so. I'm just like, that made me not want to vote. Like, it don't matter. But
what changes they've already tried to implement, that's important to me, because by the time you get to the presidency, most people have already been in office for other things, and so you can look back and see what they've already done in their local communities, because if they care a lot about where they came from, then it, like Rod said, it shows on the bigger scale. But you know, things that line up biblically, obviously that's what I look for in a candidate. You know, what are their thoughts on, because there's big issues that they talk about. They like to talk about the major points, the, you know, things that people debate on a lot. Where do they stand on that? You know, what are their measures that they're going to take, and are they just saying the thing that's going to make them sound the most popular?
Yeah, that's good.
And we got social media now, so they people who are in office, they get a chance to be them or whatever. And you get, like, when stuff go on in the world, you hear their responses. That kind of, I mean, that's a reflection of you. So if they say something that you be like, oh, okay, you know, that might be. Or if they say something crazy, you be like, okay. So I mean, that with me, I'm just saying that's how I be like, okay.
Yeah, I got that.
You know, I'm a little late,
Okay.
but I just realized my answer to your last question.
Okay.
Man.
Okay.
You know, you asked at what point did we kind of, I guess, maybe, what was it? You know, get the desire to vote, maybe, was it? Something like
well,
that.
more like, yeah, when you realize, okay, I want change in a certain area of my community. Like this need to get better.
Well, maybe it was the answer to that question.
Okay.
But I realized the moment that I was going to take interest into voting, that was actually when you said you were running,
Oh, wow.
which was a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And the only reason that it's not just because I know you personally, but I think it's because, well, that plays a huge part in it.
Yeah.
But it was the passion. I asked you, why are you running? It was like the passion of you wanting to change. Look at you trying to smile.
Being for mayor.
No, but seriously though. But
Being for
also,
president.
you know, just being, and I think this is a very interesting dynamic on this table because there's so many different perspectives. Like, because I'm way on the opposite spectrum from where you're at right now.
Yeah.
But, you know, someone like me, I was never taught anything. When you talk about the parties,
Yeah.
I'm be honest with you, I can't even tell you
Okay.
who's a Republican, who's not. I don't even know. I don't know. And so
Yeah.
if somebody asks me what I am, I have no idea because I was never taught. And so, you know, ignorance, ignorant, when you're ignorant to something, you know, I just
Yeah.
was never introduced to it. And so, you know, when it comes to a leader, like if I go vote and if I had to do it on my own, honestly, at this point, I probably would just ask Holy Spirit, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
That's good.
Because besides, you know, being exposed to voting now, Pastor talks about getting, you know,
Yeah.
the kingdom out there.
Yeah.
And so, you know, once I'm starting to hear about it more and associate it with the Word of God,
Right.
and since that part of my life is important, and I'm like, okay, maybe I should be voting. And then,
Yeah.
but as far as a leader, I don't know. It's hard for me to trust people. How can you even trust that? Okay, let's say somebody's website, you know, they say they're going to do this, this, and this.
Yeah.
How can you really trust
Right.
that they're not corrupt?
Yeah.
Well, you can't trust
You know,
in it, right?
right.
I mean,
It's
we're
like-
not supposed to
Right.
trust in it.
And
But
that's
we got to vote, right?
Yeah.
yeah,
Just-
and that's what Brittany was saying is important too. Like always, you know, take the leading and guidance of the Holy Spirit, because regardless of what you may know knowledge wise, God knows everything.
Right.
So, you know, that's one important thing to do, and that's, you know, what I've done, you know, in the past, because my first election was Obama's second term, so that was the first time I was ever able to vote. And so I was actually living with one of my best friends at the time, and we, you know, he was a political science major and all this kind of stuff, and I was like, explain to me what all this means. Like,
Right.
I don't get it. And, you know, he loved the lingo and understood it all and all that kind of stuff. And so that's what literally I had to do, because we had to vote for bills and stuff like that as well. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what these words mean, you know, help me out. And really that's how I started learning how to research what things meant. But
Yeah.
it wasn't until I was in college.
Yeah. I mean, Brittany, and that was an awesome statement, Rach. Brittany made a great point about, like, you, asking Holy Spirit, right,
Right.
for discernment. Because, you know, when you're thinking from a biblical perspective, people always want to go to the Bible, right? So we go to the Bible. It was a moment where when Judas killed himself, they had to replace him, right? And so to replace him, they had to cast lots. So a lot of people, they had two choices. They had Joseph and they had Matthias. And the lots went to Matthias, right?
Hold on, Joseph, Jesus' daddy, Joseph?
No, not that Joseph. Not that particular.
I was saying, he should have Trump and won.
Oh, man.
He
Not
would have
that
been winner.
Yeah, you know, it was a lot of Johns back in the day. A lot of Joe. Okay,
I got you.
It's
So
a
it ain't Joseph with the, you know,
Yeah.
colored. Okay.
Now, this is
never mind.
different, Joseph. All right, so Matthias won, right? But many people believe that it should have been Paul. And
I agree.
And so a lot of times, because we never
I
heard
would have
it.
voted for Paul.
I
too.
would have voted for Paul.
Hey.
He was cool. He killed people. You
But
know? I'm just saying.
Man.
That's not why I would have
that
voted
was
for him.
Saul.
Oh, you're right. You're right. You're
Okay.
right.
All right. So, but the thing about it is, they cast. What if they would have asked Holy Spirit, right?
Right.
For guidance, because we never heard anything about Matthias. I'm not saying Matthias
Yeah,
might
who's
win
that?
it.
Hey, we ain't got no problems with Matthias.
Yeah,
We don't got no problem. But we never heard from Matthias again.
Sir, you was not the right one.
So the point, what I'm saying is, when you look at it, you definitely need Holy Spirit. You need that
Right.
discernment. But like Ray said, you have to also, you need to research.
Yeah.
I mean, it's simple things that go onto their Facebook page. Really, you want to get to know somebody, go look at their social media.
Yeah.
Because they're going to keep it real. They posting things, or they,
Go to their Twitter. That's when they can say whatever
yeah,
they want.
yeah. Because let's just be honest, man. Y'all know about all the things that we've been going through in 2020 dealing with
Yeah.
racism, right?
Mhm.
And many leaders have found, they was liking posts from people who were saying crazy stuff.
Mhm.
People in high positions. See, that's why you got to go research, because
Yeah.
of course, like you said, Roz, if you go to their professional website,
Right.
they're gonna always say the right things.
Right.
But when you go find out and
What
go
they
to-
liking and sharing.
that's it. What they
That's
liking
who
and
they are.
sharing. Yeah, you
For
see,
real.
you
Who they
see.
associate with.
That's it. That's the importance, So I think that we have to do, our job in researching candidates, but leaders also got to do a better job in explaining and teaching it.
Yeah.
True.
And so, because just like going back what Brittany was saying, that no one explained that to us. She never received that information, that knowledge. I think that it should be a class in high school.
I
agree.
I think that that would be vital,
Yeah.
because they're at that position where they're about to, most seniors are 18 years old and they have that opportunity to vote. So
Yeah.
I think that's,
It's so important. I wish I would have
I
had it.
agree. I think it's like a lot of people, like if you ask them about a presidential election, I think they'd be more confident in that. But it's all the smaller stuff that people aren't really sure about, and it makes them feel that way. And I think that's, if anything, that's good practice to understand. And honestly, the local level changes more often than the presidential does.
yeah.
And
It's so important.
it is very important because, like I said earlier, those people are the ones who move up the ranks, basically. And then, if they desire to run for president or whatever, like they start usually very small.
Yeah. Or going back to what Ross, she was like, man, the reason why it made me think about it is the roles.
Yeah.
Well, that's locally.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So, having the right leaders in place to make sure that all these things are being funded properly. And that's important. And a lot of those conversations happen at your city council meetings, right? Your commissioner meetings and all these different things. But if you don't know anything about it, then guess what? We keep voting the same people in, and we're
Right.
not seeing change.
Right.
So if we want to see change, you got to vote. You got to find. And I believe as the church. So this next question, some of y'all might know, but the two major parties, you have the Republicans and then you have the Democrats. And I think that a lot of times that's a challenge, because sometimes communities just vote. If you go to vote, everybody receive a paper depending on what your area, and they say this who you should vote for, and this
Yeah.
number of Democrat candidates it's nothing but Republican candidates on that. What you feel about that? What you think about the?
I don't like that.
To ask you,
You don't?
what's
Okay.
how do you
I
get to
don't
be
like
put
it.
in the party? Like, what's Democrat?
You
What's
choose.
Republican? Like, I
Yeah.
was told that if you middle class or poor, you're a Democrat, and if you're rich, I
Actually,
mean that's
me
what
too.
I was
Yeah,
told.
yeah, yeah.
I was
That's
told
crazy.
that
I don't
rich
really
white
like
people are Republicans and everybody else a Democrat.
Wow.
Yeah.
And history shows that the ideals used to be flipped.
Yeah.
So Republicans were the more liberal, whatever, and then Democrats were more conservative. And at some point in time, it switched over the other way, and that's how we live now. But I don't like the fact that they make you choose. I
Yeah.
want a ballot with every single person that I could possibly vote for on it, which is you do with the presidential election, right? But like for local stuff, they're like, "Are you a Republican or Democrat?" And I'm like, "Well, what if I want a Republican for this, but a Democrat for this? I
That's
don't get to choose that."
Yeah.
You
Because
can't do that. That's crazy.
Yeah,
You
I
have
didn't
to
know
pick a party.
Well, in the primaries, you do.
yeah,
So you have the primary election, so there's so, and the reason why they don't want you voting cross party. So, like, say the primary election is when you have the Democratic nominees. So everybody who's gonna represent the Democratic Party, then everybody who's going to represent the Republican Party. So you only can vote for those people who you want to represent the party. Now, if you don't care and you want to vote independent, you don't have to vote. So you could just wait until the general election and then you vote for the person you want to vote. Now, in the general election, you can vote for a Democrat or a Republican.
But whenever they're being selected, you can't.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And that happened to me whenever I went to vote, a couple months ago or whenever it was. And the lady looked at me, she's like, Democrat or Republican? And I wanted to be like, give me both.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I had done my research and I knew going into it that I'd have to pick one side or the other. So, I got the one that had the most of whatever, but it was like, I don't like that you have to necessarily be segmented into one or the other.
I agree.
Because they have their stigmas both ways, but it's like, I don't believe, one way or the other.
And that's what, to go back to what Ross was saying about the point that, like, you were saying you believe that all this particular people are Republicans. And that's the problem. We put these labels, and when you put that label, it's hard because you're like, well, I don't identify with those people, so I'm going to be this. Right. Whereas you got to have an understanding of it. And that's why I wish that, we could just vote for the best person, man. Like,
right.
Like that. But it's
like heads up, 7-Up.
Like who the best person for the job? Let's get them in and not focus on a party. But it's challenging for people like that because if you don't have that party back, and that's why that's why it's so important for kingdom and believers to be involved in it. Because if they don't have the back, and then most of the time you have to choose a party to have that support. So I think it's vital for us to get active in some type of way, and so I encourage you to really research, find out who's running in your area, and study them, research them, and go look up on their Facebook page, Twitter, Instagram, and research them. And, so is it any topics that's important to you all? Like when you think about, because Rachel did talk about the hot topics, of course, but is it any particular topic for you that is like, okay, this is important that you would like to see?
Well, like you said about the police brutality and racism, like I guess, my community or my circle of friends, they say, what's the point of voting? Because what will affect us? Like that stuff is serious and we know about it, but like we'll vote. What do we vote for to change that?
So all right. So that's a great question. Most people know what's going on with Breonna Taylor, right? Yeah. Well, that AD, the person, the district attorney, the DA, that's a elected position. Yeah. So that's the reason why voting is so important. Right. So when you also look at police, right? Whoever you vote for mayor, they choose who's going to be the chief of police. Yeah. That's a appointed position from an elected official. So whoever you say, okay, I want this person to be my mayor, well, based on their beliefs and what they believe in, they're going to find somebody who have that same type of belief. So that's why you want to make sure you choose the right mayor. And so those things do affect, how a police precinct is ran and how it's governed when you have the right leadership in place. So that was
But see, people don't know that. Like, you just open my eyes. Like, yeah. Because I don't take them seriously. Those elections about the DA, I just was like, okay, my daddy say vote Democrat, whatever. But now, hearing it explained about that, we need to know, especially if you want to see change. So now that'll make me take my time when I know and say, okay, who's the best person for the job?
Right. Yeah.
Versus,
I just have something on my mind that I'm just sitting here listening to everybody because, as I stated, I knew nothing about voting. Mm-hmm. And what I was going to say a minute ago was that if you asked me right now to do research, I wouldn't even know what to look up. But Holy Spirit just dropped into my spirit. When it comes to the word, and it says, my people perish for lack of knowledge. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to scriptures and stuff, it's your due diligence to look into the Bible, to see what is it saying. Yeah. That goes back to, I think you taught about it on First Thursday when you said, when you asked everybody if they had Microsoft Office.
Oh yeah.
And it was free because it was out there. You just didn't, and so that makes me,
like that.
Sometimes I'll come across something in the Bible or something as a Christian that God has said or whatever. And I'll say, well, I didn't know that was there, but it was in the Bible,
Right.
and I had the opportunity to go look at. So when I was sitting here thinking to myself, like, well, I know nothing about voting. I know nothing about the parties, but the information is out there.
It
Right.
is.
And so I'm perishing for lack of knowledge. It's there. It's not like I don't have the opportunity to go look into it. So I think at that point, for somebody like me who knows nothing about voting, honestly had no desire to vote, if they voted in the Bible, voting is important.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But for
Yeah.
real.
Yeah.
But seriously, it's here for a reason. And
Right.
if you remember Right Way, you sit under Pastor V, he talks all the time about getting kingdom folks out there in the world. And your theme for Uno was going out in the streets. What was it? The theme for No. The theme for Uno. I remember I was going to play the don't worry about it. It's okay.
Oh, you're talking about for this year, for
This
2020?
year. Yeah, what was it going to be?
Take the city?
Take the
Oh,
city.
take
That's
the
it. Take the
city.
city.
Yeah.
Because, okay, so we want Christians to take the city. We want men of God and women of God to take the city. How are we going to get, people in the city if we don't even know what we're doing?
That's it.
You know what I'm saying?
That's
And
good.
so now that I'm thinking about it, this actually has prompted me to do my due diligence. I'm an adult. You know what I mean?
Right.
Okay, maybe in high school, nobody taught us. But guess what? Before I got saved, nobody taught me about God.
Right.
But look where I'm at now.
Right. You had
And
to-
because I did my due diligence.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's my piece.
Hey, that was
that's cute.
that was good.
That's good. I think that kids nowadays that are just starting voting hear adults say, well, my vote doesn't matter.
Right.
There's no point. And it's usually from those who feel as though the people in authority are not taking care of them.
Yeah.
Which is true for a lot of people. But whenever we get to talking about what Pastor Corey was saying earlier, when you vote for mayor, that dictates who's going to be the police chief. So when you start, you're like, oh, wait, that is my community. So when you start voting within your community, you can really see how your vote really does matter.
Definitely.
Maybe because you think everybody in America is going to vote for president, and that's a lot of people, and it feels like if I don't vote, then it's not going to matter. But think about how many people might think that.
Yeah.
Right.
And a lot of times the driving force for me is that I know people on the side that I don't think should win they're going to go vote, so I'm going to go vote.
That's it.
Because there are some things that somebody might do who is running for whatever position that you're like that person is not going to do right, and I know people are supporting them or else they wouldn't be on the ballot, so I need to go and counteract that with whatever vote it might be.
Yeah.
So there's people out there that are going to vote that are going to not be wanting the best for the people.
Yeah. I had I think Brittany went to the conference. I don't know if y'all I think y'all did it to the Orange Conference.
Yeah.
And I don't know if y'all remember I don't remember y'all remember the guy name, but he talked about at one point of his life thinking that basically if you're a Christian, you should basically be a Republican. I don't know if y'all remember that he making that statement.
I don't remember that.
I've heard that before. I don't remember that, but I've heard that before.
Why?
Yeah.
Because of their totality of their beliefs.
Yeah. That they feel like it goes more with and so when he talked about it, he said, but I realized he was like how crazy basically that was because it's Democrats that are believers.
Yeah.
Right. And so now I cut my brother and sister in Christ off no, you're not a real believer because you're not a Republican, right?
That is so silly.
And I know, and that's what, and it's sad, and I saw a situation that happened here locally that was similar, that a person talked about that they was in that same position, that they was a Democrat, their friend was a Republican, and both of them are believers. And it's just how can you be a Democrat and you're a Christian?
Wow.
And so I think we got to understand the importance of just because a situation is so important for you and that particular party highlights it and then this party doesn't, but it's another situation from this party that's very strong for you and you kind of identify with that don't mean you're not a believer.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think we need to get out of that, to that place where we look down at each other for being in different parties. If that's what God is telling you to do, that's fine, but don't make it seem like one party love Jesus and the other
you can't
party
demonize political parties. doesn't.
And so I think that's as the church, we got to make sure that we're not doing that. and understand that is a part of the system. But as a church, we need to vote for the best candidate.
Right.
We
Can I
need to.
ask a question?
Yeah.
Why do people take offense if you ask them if you're Democrat or Republican? Why is that so offensive to people? Because I mean, I've asked people, because I don't.
That's kind of like one of those questions like you don't ask that kind of deal.
Well,
Yeah.
why though? What is the? I
I've
mean, I
always
just don't understand.
heard to not ask who you vote for.
Yeah.
And just because I think it's for that reason, it's because it causes so much
division.
division.
Yeah.
Because you think, so if, someone votes for person A and another person votes for person B, most of the time they think that the other person is bad in some sense, has some sort of quality that turned them completely off. And I think even more nowadays, I don't know how elections were before I was able to vote, but it's clearly not this is going to be a tough decision because both of these people are so great.
Yeah.
Like that's usually not how it is.
Yeah.
And it even can be the opposite. So I think it's like, you don't want to create that, controversy of like, oh, you voted for someone. And so then you automatically put that person into all those beliefs of that, whoever they're voting for.
Yeah.
When it could have just been, this issue was important for me and that was the one, that I needed to be into office or whatever.
Yeah, I watched the movie. It was a very, I can't even think of the name. When I get the name, I have to let everybody know on the podcast. But it's a very funny movie, and it was about this guy who, he was smart, intelligent, but couldn't figure life out, right? And then his friend was very, did, and he's successful. And they grew up. They was college roommates, and one was a white guy, one was a black guy. And well, throughout the movie, he ended up working on a election campaign, and it was hard for him because he wanted to always be this rebel, right? And so at the end of the movie, they was talking, and he's like, "I'm just tired of different parties," and he was like, "Man, I don't understand the Republican Party." The white guy, who's a Democrat, and so the black guy looked, he said, he said, "This hard to tell, I need to tell you something." And he's like, "What?" He was like, "I'm a Republican." And he said, "What?" And he hit the dub. He's like, "Why you never said that?" It was like funny, like joking, but it was like going back to what you were saying. People don't talk about it because they think about division automatically, whatever that party stands on, or that particular person.
Yeah.
So if the opposite side, let me just give you an example, and I'm not saying these facts, but I'm just using what people would say the opposite side would say. So to Trump, they would say he's a bigot or racist, right? Type of person. All right. So for Biden, they would say he supports abortion or any different things. So choose.
Yeah.
So if someone say I support Trump, they're gonna say, "Oh, so you are racist." And then if somebody say I support Biden, they're like,
you
want to kill babies, right? You know what I'm saying?
They take it to the extreme.
They take it to the extreme. So the reason why people don't want to answer that question because they don't know what your response will be.
Right.
They don't know if I'm talking to a person who's gonna take it to the extreme. So they'd rather say, "Look, that's my choice," and I understand that. I mean, that is, I do think that's a person's choice if they would like to say something about it because they understand. I don't want to get in a debate right now.
Yeah,
about
that makes sense.
Politics is just so intense.
And I think
it's always.
Yeah, I think what I learned just through talking to friends and stuff, and really understanding it in like a basic way, is that neither side is going to be 100% right.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be some things so that, you're going through and you're like, okay, this is what they believe and this is what they're for and stuff like that. And there may be a couple things that you're like, that's not me, but I think it's really important that this and this and this and this and this gets done. So, if I'm having to weigh, the other side is not, for that at all. So, you can't go into it thinking there's going to be somebody who's going to come in and it's going to be like, this is the best thing and they're the best person and all this kind of stuff because one, they're a person. And so, whatever. But at the same time, it's like neither side is going to be 100% for whatever you're doing or whatever you believe.
What I want to do, I think for me, and if y'all want to jump in and say anything, some tips that I look at, and I know some of y'all are like, well, I never voted, but just something that you think that every candidate should have. And you said something, Rachel, that I think is important. Before this particular president, most elected officials were in most of the time they in some position before that. I think it's important that every leader should be active in their community, whatever place they in. To me, I just think if it going back to what Brittany said with me, she said what made me want to kind of vote is hearing you. That's relationship, right? So I think that every leader should have a relationship with the community or city they serve.
Right.
What area that you're representing. I shouldn't just, okay, man, where you come from? I ain't never seen you before, right? Like, you should have some type of connection, because when you have that connection, 9 out of 10, now when you get in that position, people gonna hold you accountable because they see you, for one. You know what I mean? They see you on the, and you will be able to inspire others to want to go forward. So any traits or anything that you feel like, okay, man, when you vote for somebody, I think that this person should do this.
Yeah.
Do this or have this.
I'll have this.
A relationship with God.
Okay, that's a good one.
But seriously, because, okay, how are you going to lead people if you're not being led by God? Like, if you're not following God, rather. Where are you getting your source from?
What's your source?
Is Holy Spirit guiding you? Because you're making big decisions
That's good.
now.
Yeah.
And you make big decisions over a lot of people.
Yeah.
And are you hiding the fact that you have a relationship with God, that you're a Christian? Or are you like, hey, I'm a Christian. This is what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, that's important to me.
I love that. What spirit leading you? Woo-hoo!
Yeah. No, seriously. Because something is.
Yeah, something.
Right.
Yeah.
So, no, I totally agree with that. Like, and piggybacking off of that from what you said about like hiding it and stuff, I think that there are people that I'm trying to, there are people that do a lot of non-Christian things that stand on Christ, that say that, they're Christian and stuff like that. And so that's the view that a lot of people get of Christ, is people who are acting crazy and not like Christ, but claim him. And so I think that whatever fruit they have of being in their community and helping, their community grow and whatever, those two things are so important to me, because, kind of like a, what are you going to do for the least of these kind of deal. Like if you're willing to make potholes, disappear from roads, and if you're willing to make sure that the school is funded properly in this small town, imagine what they'd be willing to do for the entire. It starts in the small stuff. And even if it's like, I was a Little League coach for 3 years, and whatever, like something, like if you're not active in anything to make anybody in the community better, you just thank you next.
Matter, man.
Yeah.
Pastor pulled up
with his poor
Pastor
tire.
pulled up. He had a new tire. I guess he hit a pothole. That thing split in the middle of the tire. The inside. But seriously, and I've gotten flat tires from potholes too.
Yeah.
Them tires are not cheap.
Your cars.
Yeah.
I mean,
and it ends up costing
a lot of money.
The community more money, because the community members more money, because it's an oversight.
Yeah. But I love what you said. Like, just don't just talk about it. I need to see action.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, that's the thing. You want to see action, because it's easy to say what you're going to do.
Yeah.
You should have been doing it already.
Right.
You don't need a title to do actions.
Exactly.
Talk to him.
Exactly. I mean, even thinking about Corey Bell, whenever she wanted to go out and clean up her community,
Yeah.
Right.
which she is very much influenced by you, which you're setting a great example for her.
Yeah.
And it's, her starting that young. I mean, she can say that whenever she runs for office one day or whatever, even if it's student council, she can say, when I was a kid, I was cleaning my community.
That's it.
So it's like, and I'd be like, I vote for her.
Right.
Right, that's what's up, man. Well, I enjoy it. Anybody else have anything that they want to share before we leave?
Go vote.
Go vote.
Register to vote.
That's it. You still have some time. Yeah.
Research.
Yeah, you still have time to register to vote. If you feel like, oh man, it's too many people, you can do absentee ballot.
Yep.
So it's other ways that you can get out and vote where you don't have to worry about being around a bunch of people.
Start now.
Yeah.
Don't wait
That's it.
until the week before.
Yeah. And
we
tell
can-
somebody.
Yeah.
Tell, like, we just think about all your kids, your cousins who haven't registered to vote. Go tell them, man, look, get up and go vote. Let's make a change in our community.
Yeah, we got to do it.
All right. Well, this is Breaking Bread, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.